Today, we are beginning our study through the Psalms. For the next several weeks and months during this time and period of devotion each week, we will attempt to develop a larger appreciation for the Psalms. I need to begin, though, by being completely honest with a warning that I am woefully underprepared for this task. As I continue to read through the Psalms, I continue to study the Psalms, I continue to try to grow in love and knowledge of the Psalms, I realize that I am far from ready for the task that lies ahead of us. But as I've used 4 different authors in aiding me through the Psalms, I have realized that most of them have felt a very similar way. And I think the conclusion that I've come to is that no one is truly ever ready to begin a journey through the Psalms, but instead you simply have to begin. And so today we begin. We're going to start this journey through the Psalms that will hopefully take us down a transformative path that will lead us for a deeper love for our Father and for the spiritual hymn book and prayer book of the early church and of ancient Israel. I want to begin, like I said, there are 4 different authors that I've used to aid me during this task. 4 primary authors. I've looked at several others as well, but there are 4 primary authors who are going to be helping us in this study over the next several months. I want to begin by looking today, this is kind of an introduction. I want to begin by looking at some of their thoughts on the Psalms as we prepare for this journey. N.T. Wright, in his book, has several things to say about the Psalms. He says, "For me to think about the Psalms is like thinking about breathing. I breathe all the time, but seldom stop to think about it or about what might happen if I tried to stop. In the same way, I have sung, said, and read the Psalms all of my life." Later he says, "This book is not so much an invitation to study the Psalms, but to pray and live the Psalms," talking about his work. Later he goes on and continues with, "Not reading the Psalms is the Christian equivalent of a musician who assumes she can still perform at concert level without the daily discipline or practice, or the soccer player who still expects to score goals in games without ever showing up to practice." J. Clinton McCann quotes from Martin Luther in his book as he opens. He opens with this Martin Luther quote, which Martin Luther uses at the beginning of his book on the Psalms. "Where does one find finer words of joy than in the Psalms of praise and thanksgiving? There you look into hearts of all saints, as into fair and pleasant gardens, yes, as into heaven itself. There you see what fine and pleasant flowers of the heart spring up from all sorts of fair and happy thoughts toward God because of his blessings. On the other hand, where do you find deeper, more sorrowful, more pitiful words of sadness than in the Psalms of lamentation? There again you look into the hearts of all the saints, as into death, yes, as into hell itself. How gloomy and dark it is there, with all kinds of troubled and forebodings about the wrath of God. So too, when they speak of fear and hope, they use such words that no painter could so depict for you fear or hope, and no Cicero or other orator so portray them. And that they speak these words to God, and with God, this, I repeat, is the best thing of all. This gives the words double earnestness and life. Hence, it is that the Psalter is the book of all saints, and everyone, in whatever situation he may be, finds in that situation psalms and words that fit his case, that suit him as if they were put there just for his sake, so that he could not put it better himself, or find or wish for anything better." Lynn Anderson has this to say on the Psalms: "Why have the Psalms been so important to people of faith through the ages? Because they speak to the hunger we have for God and put us in touch with our desire to pursue and talk back to him." He continues later, "If you genuinely want a fresh approach to pursuing God, the most traveled and proven prayer path is the Psalms." The Psalms have clearly had a profound impact on these authors. They've had a profound impact on most churchgoers as well, whether we realize it or not. We frequently sing, pray, and memorize verses from the Psalter, even if we don't realize it. The Psalms are the most quoted Old Testament scripture that we see in the New Testament. Jesus quotes the Psalms far more frequently than he does any other Old Testament scripture. It was scripture that would have been on the hearts of Paul and Peter and Jesus as they sat in worship at the temple and came together as ancient Israel to pray and sing and study together. These would have been the words that were on their hearts and on their lips and on their tongues. These would have been the songs and the prayers that were with them throughout their daily lives. These would have been the words that they remembered whenever they were going through a time of joy, a time of sorrow, a time of great angst, a time of despair, whatever time they were going through in life. It would have been words from these psalms, from their ancient hymn book, that were on their minds, their hearts, and their lips. I want to end today with our challenge for the next several weeks. I know today is a little bit shorter, but over the next several weeks and months, we will dig deep into these Psalms. But I want to end with the challenge that goes back to the quote from N.T. Wright. He's talking about his book. He says, "This book is not so much an invitation to study the Psalms, but to pray and live them." Our challenge is the same. This series of devotionals is not so much an invitation to study the Psalms as it is to pray and live the Psalms. I hope that we learn, I hope that we grow in our knowledge and understanding of the Psalms, but the hope that far outweighs that is the hope that we are people who are transformed by the Psalms, by living them out, by praying them to God, allowing Him to pray them back to us, and that through us continuing to look at these Psalms, continuing to read and dwell and meditate on these Psalms, that we may have a deeper appreciation for the words of God, that we may have a deeper understanding, a deeper love for the Creator Himself. And so the challenge that I want to give you this week is this, that today you sit down and you read 5 Psalms. You read 5 Psalms, you reflect, you meditate, and you pray those Psalms back to God. And then tomorrow you do it again. And the next day and the day after as well. And you continue doing that. And you allow the presence of these Psalms in your life to transform you in a way that few other scriptures are able to. A journey through the Psalms is not one to be taken lightly. There's transformative power in the words of the Psalter, and I pray that it may be a blessing to us as we dedicate this time each week to living out these beautiful poems. I want to end today by looking at Psalm 1. I think a very appropriate place to begin with this challenging yet incredible book. Psalm 1 will be our prayer for this week as we head into our study of the Psalms. We head into a period of hopefully vast transformation within our lives. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Not so the wicked, they are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction. Let this psalm be the one that begins our journey through living and praying these psalms day by day.